The country club dining room buzzed with conversation as nearly 100 people gathered to celebrate my father's retirement after 35 years as CEO of Morrison Manufacturing. Crystal chandeliers cast warm light over tables decorated with gold and navy blue, the company colors, while waiters in crisp white jackets served champagne and hors d'oeuvres to Dad's colleagues, business partners and family friends. I sat at a table near the back, wearing a simple black dress I'd bought off the clearance rack at Target. Around me sat my extended family, most of whom worked for Morrison Manufacturing in various capacities. My cousin Jake was the VP of Operations, my uncle Richard headed up sales, and my brother Marcus had just been promoted to Director of Business Development. Then there was me, the family disappointment who worked from a cramped studio apartment doing what everyone called computer stuff. "Look at this crowd," my Aunt Linda whispered to my mother loud enough for me to hear. "Your husband really built something special. Too bad not all his children inherited his business sense." She glanced pointedly in my direction. I pretended to be fascinated by my salmon dinner. Dad stood at the head table, resplendent in his best suit, preparing to give his farewell speech. At 65, he still commanded attention when he entered a room. He'd built Morrison Manufacturing from a small machine shop into a company with 3 factories and 800 employees. He was rightfully proud of what he'd accomplished. "Ladies and gentlemen," he began, tapping his champagne flute with a fork. "Thank you all for being here tonight to celebrate not just my retirement, but the incredible journey we've taken together at Morrison Manufacturing." The room quieted as everyone turned their attention to the man of the hour. When I started this company in 1989, I had a simple vision: build quality products with integrity, treat employees like family, and always put the customer first. Those values have guided us through every challenge, every expansion, every success. Applause filled the room. I clapped along, genuinely proud of what Dad had built, even if I'd never been part of it. "Of course, building a family business means hoping the next generation will carry on what you've started," Dad continued. "I'm blessed to have children who understand the value of hard work and dedication." He raised his glass toward my brother Marcus, who beamed from his seat at the head table. "Marcus has shown incredible promise in his short time with the company. His innovative thinking and natural leadership skills remind me of myself at his age. I have no doubt he'll help Morrison Manufacturing reach even greater heights in the years to come." More applause. Marcus stood briefly to acknowledge the recognition, his chest puffed out with pride. "My nephew Jake has been instrumental in streamlining our operations, and my brother Richard has opened doors to markets we never thought possible. This truly is a family legacy." Dad paused, his eyes scanning the room until they landed on me. The warmth in his expression cooled noticeably. "Of course, not every child is cut out for the family business," he said, his voice taking on a different tone. "Some people prefer to chase dreams rather than build realities. Some people think success comes from playing with computers instead of working with their hands." I felt my cheeks burn as conversations around the room died down. People were starting to stare. "My daughter Jennifer has chosen a different path," Dad continued, apparently deciding this was the appropriate venue for a public critique of my life choices. "While her brother and cousins are building careers in the real world, she's been, well, let's call it finding herself in the technology sector." A few people chuckled uncomfortably. I stared down at my plate, wishing I could disappear. "Now, I'm not saying there's anything wrong with having hobbies," Dad went on, clearly enjoying his moment at the podium. "But at some point you have to face reality. You have to accept that not everyone is destined for greatness. Some people are just meant to be ordinary." The word hit me like a physical blow. Ordinary. In a room full of his business associates and family members, my father had just declared me ordinary. "The truth is, ladies and gentlemen, every family has one," Dad said, raising his glass again. "The disappointment. The one who never quite lives up to expectations. The one who makes you wonder where you went wrong as a parent." I could feel tears threatening to spill over, but I forced myself to keep looking down. "Don't give him the satisfaction of seeing you cry," I told myself. "So here's to Morrison Manufacturing," Dad declared, his voice booming across the room. "Here's to the family members who understand what it means to build something real. And here's to accepting that unlike my daughter, our biggest failure, some people in this family actually understand what success looks like." He drained his champagne glass as the room erupted in applause. but I noticed it was less enthusiastic than before. Even his business associates seemed uncomfortable with how personal and cruel his speech had become. I was gathering my purse, preparing to leave as quietly as possible, when the dining room doors opened and a woman in a sharp navy blazer walked in. She looked around the room with the confident air of someone who belonged wherever she decided to be. "Excuse me," she called out, her voice cutting through the conversations that had resumed after Dad's toast. "I'm looking for Jennifer Morrison?" The room fell silent again. 100 pairs of eyes turned to look at me, then at the woman who'd just interrupted the retirement party. "I'm Jennifer," I said quietly, raising my hand slightly. The woman smiled and walked directly toward my table, her heels clicking authoritatively on the polished floor. "Ms. Morrison, I'm Sarah Chin from Forbes magazine. I'm here about the article we discussed regarding your company." I heard my father's champagne glass hit the floor and shatter. "I apologize for interrupting the party," Sarah continued, speaking loudly enough for everyone in the room to hear. "But our editorial deadline was moved up, and I needed to confirm a few details about the feature story we're running next week." My mother leaned forward, her face pale. "Feature story?" Sarah pulled out a tablet and swiped to what appeared to be a magazine layout. "Yes, we're doing a cover story on the most innovative tech entrepreneurs under 35. Jennifer's company, Quantum Systems, is being featured as one of the most disruptive forces in artificial intelligence." You could have heard a pin drop in that dining room. "Ms. Morrison," Sarah continued, "I just wanted to confirm that the $3.8 billion valuation we received from your CFO is accurate for the print edition?" My brother Marcus made a choking sound. $3.8 billion? My Uncle Richard whispered. Sarah nodded matter-of-factly. "The AI systems that Quantum Systems has developed are revolutionizing everything from medical diagnostics to autonomous vehicles. Our tech reporters are calling it the most significant breakthrough in machine learning since neural networks were first developed." Dad was staring at me like he'd never seen me before in his life. "I'm sorry," he said, his voice barely audible. "Did you say $3.8 billion? Sarah looked at him with professional politeness. "Oh, you must be Jennifer's father. How wonderful to meet you. You must be so proud. Your daughter has built one of the most valuable private companies in the country. The Pentagon alone has contracted Quantum Systems for $400 million in defense applications." "The Pentagon?" Dad repeated weakly. "Oh yes, Jennifer's quantum computing algorithms are considered essential to national security. And that's not even including the commercial applications. Microsoft, Google, Amazon, they're all licensing Quantum Systems technology. Jennifer, I believe the most recent contract with Apple was worth $800 million. I nodded, finding my voice for the first time since she'd arrived. "The machine learning integration for their next-generation devices, yes." "Remarkable," Sarah said, making notes on her tablet. "And the IPO announcement, we're still planning to break that story simultaneously with the Forbes cover, correct? Our financial team is estimating the public offering could value Quantum Systems at over $12 billion. The silence in the room was deafening. I could see Dad trying to process what he was hearing, his face cycling through confusion, shock, and something that might have been panic. "Ms. Morrison," Sarah continued, "I also wanted to ask about the philanthropic initiative mentioned in our preliminary interview. The Quantum Education Foundation. We're committing $500 million over the next 5 years to fund STEM education in underserved communities," I explained, "particularly focusing on getting young women and minorities into computer science and engineering." "Wonderful. And the university partnerships. MIT, Stanford, and Carnegie Mellon will be opening Quantum Systems research labs on their campuses. We're also endowing chairs in artificial intelligence at a dozen universities." Sarah nodded approvingly. "This is exactly the kind of forward-thinking leadership our readers want to hear about. Oh, and I almost forgot. The National Science Foundation Award ceremony is next week, isn't it?" "Tuesday," I confirmed. "The Medal for Scientific Achievement. For readers who might not be familiar, can you explain what that honor represents?" "It's awarded annually to an individual whose scientific work has had profound impact on American technology and innovation. Previous recipients include Nobel Prize winners and the founders of companies like Intel and Apple." I glanced around the room and saw faces I'd never seen before: awe, respect, and in many cases, fear. These people who'd been enjoying my public humiliation 5 minutes ago were now realizing they'd been in the presence of someone they didn't understand at all. Dad set his empty champagne glass down with trembling hands. Jennifer, how long have you? 6 years, I said quietly. I started quantum systems right after college, working out of my apartment. The first 3 years were just me and one other programmer building the foundational algorithms. We got our first major contract in year 4 and things accelerated from there. But you never said anything. You never told us about any contracts or success or... I tried to, Dad. Remember when I came to Christmas dinner 3 years ago and mentioned that my computer hobby had landed a government contract? You told me to stop making up stories to make myself sound important. Dad's face went white as he clearly remembered that conversation. Or when I tried to explain what machine learning was at Marcus's birthday party, and you said I was speaking gibberish and should focus on finding a husband instead of playing with toys? My mother put her hand over her mouth. I stopped trying to share my work with the family because every time I mentioned it, you either dismissed it or turned it into a lecture about how I needed to be more realistic. Sarah looked between us, clearly realizing she'd walked into a family drama. Perhaps I should reschedule our interview for a more convenient time. No, it's fine, I said. Actually, this is perfect timing. I think my family is finally ready to hear about what I've been working on. I stood up and faced the room full of people who'd been witnesses to my father's public dismissal of me. For those who don't know me, I'm Jennifer Morrison. For the last 6 years, while my family thought I was wasting my time playing with computers, I've been building artificial intelligence systems that are changing how the world processes information. I walked to the front of the room, where Dad's podium still stood with his retirement speech notes scattered across it. Quantum Systems employs 847 people across offices in Silicon Valley, Boston, and Austin. Our AI algorithms are used in 73% of smartphones worldwide. The voice assistant you talk to in your car? Probably running on our natural language processing. The medical imaging that helps doctors detect cancer early? Our pattern recognition software. The financial systems that prevent credit card fraud? That's us too. The room was absolutely silent. Even the waiters had stopped moving. Last month, our quantum computing division solved a protein folding problem that could lead to cures for Alzheimer's and Parkinson's disease. The National Institutes of Health called it the most significant medical breakthrough in decades. I looked directly at my father, who was staring at me like I was a stranger. You asked what success looks like, Dad. Success looks like building something that makes the world better. Success looks like employing nearly 900 people who are passionate about pushing the boundaries of what's possible. Success looks like having the President of the United States call to personally thank you for your contributions to national security. Dad's mouth was hanging slightly open. Success looks like being invited to speak at the World Economic Forum about the future of artificial intelligence. Success looks like having your research published in Nature and Science, the most prestigious scientific journals in the world. I paused, letting that sink in. But you know what success really looks like? It looks like being proud of what you've built, regardless of whether other people understand it or value it. Sarah stepped forward. Ms. Morrison, would this be a good time to mention the White House Science and Technology Policy Fellowship? I nodded. Next month, I'll be spending 6 months in Washington as an advisor to the President on AI policy and national competitiveness. It's considered one of the most prestigious appointments in American science. My cousin Jake, who'd been silent throughout this entire exchange, finally spoke up. Jennifer, when you say $3.8 billion valuation, that means if quantum systems were sold today, that's what it would be worth. But we're not selling. We're preparing for an IPO that will value the company at over $12 billion while allowing us to maintain control and continue our research. And you own how much of the company? My Uncle Richard asked. 67%. I've given equity stakes to key employees and early investors, but I maintain controlling interest. My brother Marcus was frantically calculating on his phone. Jennifer, that means your personal net worth is approximately $8 billion, assuming the IPO goes as projected. The silence that followed was different from before. It wasn't uncomfortable or awkward. It was the silence of people trying to fundamentally recalibrate their understanding of reality. Dad walked slowly from the head table to where I stood at the podium. His face had gone through several emotional changes, but now he just looked small. Jennifer, he said quietly, I owe you an apology. I owe you the biggest apology a father has ever owed a daughter. Dad. No, let me say this. In front of all these people who heard me call you a failure, let me say what I should have said years ago. He turned to face the room. My daughter is not a failure. My daughter is not ordinary. My daughter has built something I couldn't even dream of building. His voice was shaking now. Jennifer, I was wrong about everything. I was wrong about your work, wrong about your potential, wrong about what success looks like. You didn't fail to live up to my expectations. I failed to understand what you were achieving. He turned back to me. Can you forgive me? I looked at this man who had shaped so much of my self-doubt, who had made me question my worth for years, who had just publicly humiliated me in front of 100 people. And I realized that holding on to anger would only hurt me. Dad, I forgave you a long time ago. I had to for my own peace of mind. But I'm glad you finally understand. Sarah cleared her throat gently. Ms. Morrison, I don't want to interrupt this moment, but I did want to mention one more thing for the article. The acquisition you completed last week. I smiled. Oh right. Quantum Systems acquired Morrison Manufacturing's 3 largest competitors. We're planning to modernize their operations with AI-driven efficiency systems. Dad's eyes went wide. You mean Henderson Industries? They've been trying to buy us out for years. We bought them. And Patterson Manufacturing. And Diversified Industrial Solutions. Quantum Systems now owns the 3 companies that Morrison Manufacturing has been competing against for decades. But why? Dad asked. Because I believe in what you built here. Morrison Manufacturing has integrity, quality, and loyal employees. I want to help this company thrive in the digital age, not just survive it. I walked back to my purse and pulled out a folder I'd been carrying for weeks, waiting for the right moment. Dad, I know you're retiring, but I'd like you to consider staying on as an advisor. Quantum Systems wants to establish Morrison Manufacturing as the flagship of our new industrial AI division. We're talking about a $200 million investment in new equipment, expanded facilities, and workforce development. Dad took the folder with shaking hands and opened it to reveal an offer letter that would transform his small company into a technology powerhouse. The current employees would all keep their jobs with significant pay increases and full benefits. Marcus, Jake, Uncle Richard. There are positions for all of them in the new structure, if they're interested in learning about AI integration in manufacturing. Marcus looked up from his phone where he'd apparently been Googling my company. Jennifer, Forbes called you the most important entrepreneur most people have never heard of. I prefer to let my work speak for itself rather than seek publicity, I replied. Though that's about to change with the IPO announcement. Sarah packed up her tablet. Ms. Morrison, I think we have everything we need for the article. The photographer will be in touch about the cover shoot, and will send you the final draft for approval before publication. Thank you, Sarah. And thank you for coming tonight. I think my family needed to hear this. As Sarah left, the dining room erupted in conversation. Everyone wanted to talk to me, to ask questions, to somehow connect themselves to this revelation. But I only had eyes for my father, who was still staring at the acquisition offer with tears in his eyes. Jennifer, he said quietly, how do I even begin to make up for what I said tonight? For what I've said over the years? You don't need to make up for anything, Dad. You taught me to work hard, to persevere, to build something meaningful. Those lessons are the foundation of everything I've accomplished. But I called you a failure. In front of all these people, I called you the family disappointment. And now they know the truth. Sometimes the best revenge is simply success. My mother appeared at my side, tears streaming down her face. Jennifer, honey, I'm so proud of you. I'm so sorry we didn't understand. Mom, it's okay. I know it's hard to understand what I do. Artificial intelligence and quantum computing aren't exactly dinner table conversation topics. But we should have tried to understand. We should have supported you instead of criticizing you. I hugged her tightly. You did support me in ways you probably don't even realize. Every time you told me to work harder, every time you pushed me to be better, you were preparing me for this. The rest of the evening passed in a blur of conversations, congratulations, and questions. People who had ignored me for years suddenly wanted to know everything about my work, my plans, my vision for the future. Business cards were exchanged, partnerships were discussed, and investment opportunities were explored. But the most important moment came at the end of the night, as the party was winding down and Dad and I found ourselves alone at a table in the corner. "Jennifer," he said, "I want you to know that I'm going to accept your offer. Not because of the money or the prestige, but because I want to learn. I want to understand what you've built. I want to be part of something that's going to change the world. I'd love to have you as part of the team, Dad. But only if you're genuinely interested in the work. This isn't charity. I need someone who understands manufacturing and can help bridge the gap between traditional industry and AI innovation." He nodded seriously. "I'll study. I'll learn everything I can about artificial intelligence and how it applies to manufacturing. I'll earn my place on your team." "Our team," I corrected. "We're family. We've always been family, even when we didn't understand each other." As I drove home that night, in my practical Honda Civic because I still believed in living modestly despite my wealth, I reflected on how completely my life had changed in a single evening. The family dynamics that had defined my entire adult life had been rewritten in the span of one conversation. Tomorrow I would go back to being the quiet billionaire who preferred anonymity to attention. But tonight I was finally seen by the people who mattered most to me. Tonight I was no longer the family failure. I was exactly who I'd always been. A daughter who had chosen to build something extraordinary, even when no one believed she could.